Hi, everyone. This is Ronnie, and I'm here with Nate Burba from Survios. Nate, how are you doing today?
Ronnie, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, and yeah, I just wanted to thank you for coming on our show again. If for those out there that are new or might not recall, Nate was on our show back over a year ago. I think it was in May of 2017. He was on our show talking back then mostly about raw data, a little bit about sprint vector, and just in general, kind of what Survios was all about. Obviously, I know Survios has been up to a lot, grown a ton since we last spoke. So yeah, just wanted to check in with you, Nate, just to see how things are going now that Electronauts has been recently released, and kind of talk a little bit about that as well as other things that are going on at Survios.
Yeah, I mean, well, so as we record this, Electronauts is going to be released, I think, within the next 12 to 16 hours, something like that. So it's incredibly exciting. I'm on pins and needles right now, and it's a project that's been a long time coming. It's actually been in development for over 2 years, and so it's something that I am it's the project that I'm the project lead on, whereas I was an executive producer on Raw Data and Sprint Vector. So it's something that I personally have been working on a lot. And really the company has evolved a lot over the last 2 years. We've grown, and subsequently we have a lot of different projects and things we're working on. We've opened up our own arcade down in Torrance, here in California, in Los Angeles, and we're looking at expanding, opening up another location because that first location went really well. We have Electronauts coming out. We have Creed that we're working on, which I can talk more about, and then a number of things coming after that as well. So there's a lot of things that we're working on. We really believe in VR. We have a slight eye toward AR and other future possibilities as well, and we're really just excited about what the future holds.
Yeah, so going off of going off of what you guys are up to, one of the things that I've noticed about Survios in particular, compared to a lot of the other, you guys are very public facing in terms of the projects that you guys are involved with, that you're working on, and in terms of like your presence at different game shows like GDC and E3. You guys had huge presence at both of those shows. You were showing off, I believe, Creed and Electronauts, at both those times. And I know Electronauts in particular, given kind of the music nature and the awesome presentation that it's able to put on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have showed it off at quite a bit of different like festivals and music, different concerts and stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we've shown it off at EDC most recently, the Electric Daisy Carnival, which is in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I think it's the largest. It might be the largest music festival in the world, or it's definitely one of the largest. I think it's like 200,000 people or something like
Wow.
that. And so we showed that off in the Carnival Square there, where they had a few things you can interact with, and we brought it to South by Southwest and NAMM, which is one of the biggest music technology trade shows in the world. And the response that we've gotten from it has just been incredible. I mean, it's one of those things where if you give an interaction that by itself is really, really fun, that someone can get into in just a few seconds in VR, you immediately get that massive smile on their face, and you kind of get them hooked right from the get-go. And so I think both Creed and Electronauts have interaction systems that really let you do that. That you get in there, and there's not really a learning curve. You kind of know what to expect, and then the incredible amount of quality is very evident right when you get in the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got a chance. I think when I was at GDC, I got to talk with Henry Calverson, I believe his name was, and Hunter Kitagawa. They were both people that were working on Electronauts, and they were both super, super excited. Like, you could just see the excitement dripping off of their faces when they were explaining, what they were working on, and the current build of the game, and talking with you now as the project lead. I mean, you guys obviously have a ton of passion about the projects that you're doing, and whether it be Electronauts or Creed, it seems like all of your passion projects are also different, yet all of the teams, are just full in on all of them. I didn't know if you wanted to speak a little bit about what led you guys to create Electronauts and kind of what pushed you down that path for this project.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll bounce off of the passion side of it. Each of our projects are, pretty different, and they're different because they're made from by different people from different teams, and there's kind of a different cultural mindset going into each one. And Electronauts is really, really, really different. Electronauts is basically the game that we, when it's like 8 p.m. at the office, or we're having like a few drinks on a Friday or something. That's the game we bring out and play, and just kind of hang out with our friends. And it's really about that kind of relaxed, easy jamming kind of party atmosphere and environment.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that I would say is embodied by Henry Halverson, our lead audio designer on the project, and has been instrumental in pulling together all of the music and crafting it into the game, and just doing a number of different things on the project. And then Hunter, who's the product marketing manager on it. Those two guys are really, I would say they embody the kind of ethos of Electronauts pretty well. And then along with a bunch of other people on the team, like it really is something where I don't know the best way to describe it. It's like you feel like just a music badass, and you're able to I don't know, have these incredible small little moments, kind of like the if you ever go to like a music festival and you have that that one moment, that kind of the cliched moment at this point where the drop happens and everyone's dancing and everyone's freaking out and everyone's having a lot of fun. Electronauts, the whole point of it is to kind of get together with your friends and be able to create that moment in a few minutes at your house, right? And kind of really to try to democratize that EDM festival experience, but then also democratize playing music, and essentially the feeling that musicians, they're so chill all the time because they get to have these moments all the time, right? So they're living a pretty nice life full of these incredible experiences that honestly most people don't really get to experience. They get to experience them kind of second hand or third hand, so to speak. But this, you really get to experience it firsthand. And what we found is just the ability to give that experience to someone is a very powerful and incredible thing. It kind of opens up their mind to something that they might have never really done before, which is, like I said, just play an instrument. And because it takes so much time and effort to learn how to play an instrument, that you never get to that kind of euphoric point where you can really jam out. This kind of just like, is like a shortcut to that. And so when we first built, I can tell you a little bit more about the development of it, if you'd like.
Yeah.
It all it started with me discovering a game called Plink. And Plink, I'm going to Google it right now just to kind of refresh my memory. But Plink, it's spelled Plink by Dynamo Labs, DINAHMOE. And this is just a small kind of like I think like advertising company who made this little toy. I don't know exactly who made it there. But basically, this was a thing that let you play a few different, like a few different notes of a few different kind of like quote unquote instruments. Really, just like clicking and holding and dragging your mouse up and down in a browser, and you could play a few of these little instruments, and you could switch from like 8 different ones. And it was really simple. There's just a beat going on in the background. And you just play one of these, and basically. Other people would appear and play alongside you because they were also playing the game through the web browser at the same time. So they had like a server backend that just randomly matched you up with other people. And so inevitably you would start playing these little melodies back and forth with other people online who you didn't even know. And it was a really just very, very compelling experience because you felt like you were playing some music, and then you could also jam with people a little bit. But it was incredibly limited, and it was just a little bit of music that was in the games, very, very small, effectively like one song or almost like half a song or something. And so I saw that someone introduced this game to me when I was at USC, and it always stuck with me. It was always kind of in the back of my head, like, I can hand this to someone and they can just put their finger on the screen and they'll smile, right? Immediately it gets that reaction. And so, I was wondering how could I take the concepts there and apply them to something. And so as we were developing raw data, and really this is, I think in early 2016, so basically a bit about the history of the company, we used to develop hardware as well. And we had a number of people on the hardware side, including industrial designers and electrical engineers, and in particular, we had two good friends of mine, Rasik, Srinath, Ramesh, and Umez Lilawala. I always mispronounce his last name. Those guys, he's going to kill me for saying it like that. But basically, basically they were working on the hardware side of things, and when we essentially pivoted away from doing hardware, we I basically said, hey, find something else you guys want to do. So Umez, he got into the UX side of things and is now UX designer working in Unreal and Unity and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then Rosik, he got into the music and software engineering side of things, and in particular Rosik started basically, I asked Rasa, can you build something that has some similarities to this? That basically, can you build something with a quantized instrument in it? And he built a small prototype. We actually ended up using the Trent Reznor had released the 9 Inch Nails masters for a remix album.
Oh, and real quick, for those that might not know what quantized, do you say quantized instrument?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, if you could just explain what it is a little bit.
Sure. So basically, the way Plink had it implemented, if I recall correctly, is essentially you held down your finger on the screen and it would play notes that were in the right time, so you didn't have to time them. So normally when you're playing a real instrument, you're tapping on something, or you're creating some sort of sound through some sort of interface, banging on a drum or using a piano or what have you. And part of how good you are or not good you are is based on how well you can time your hit with some musical fundamentals, right? And the most fundamental thing is just creating some rhythm, right? Which is hitting it repeatedly at the same speed to create kind of a beat, right? That's kind of the fundamental piece of music. And right there you have something that the vast majority of people are not particularly that good at, right? Is keeping a beat. And so right there's already a barrier to entry, for music. And so basically, what Plink did is you could hold down your finger and it would do the beat for you essentially, and then you could run your finger up and down and that would create different notes that essentially would create a melody. So the fact that it was quantized meant that there's a delay between when you tap the screen and when the sound actually happens. But because in Plink you would just hold it down, it didn't really matter. You weren't really playing notes. You were just turning a track on and off, really.
Sure.
But we really liked that concept. And so we built a non-VR prototype for this. It was really just something you held a game controller with, and you would basically play around with it. You'd press some of the buttons to hit notes, or you would hold down. Originally, I think you held down the right trigger and hit the left stick up and down, and that would basically play, a set of notes kind of on or off. And basically, we were able to get really nice sounds. Rosik is also a music producer himself, but so he was able to synthesize sounds, and he was also able to bring stuff in from some masters of albums that we kind of had laying around. One of them was the Ghosts album by Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, because he had released that for free to people to mess around with, because he wanted people to make a remix album, which they subsequently did. But we were able to use masters just for kind of prototyping purposes, and we basically made this little prototype. I think we used that, and we used like a BC Boys master we found or something.
Okay.
And we had actually you could play it with two game controllers, and it was really fun. It was just fun just to mess around playing music with just these little prototype songs. And we had some people at the office, Spencer Kitagawa in particular, Hunter's brother, was incredibly good at it, because Spencer's also a music producer, but he's just really good. Both Spencer and Hunter are really, really adept at like musical toys, so to speak. And so this is when we kind of really started playing around with toys. We started playing around with that. We're playing around with like some of the Korg toys and Korg apps that they have. This is where I also learned what an arpeggiator was, which is basically a repeated set of notes that you can kind of play in different in different keys, and then and if you quantize them properly, you kind of can't screw up. So this is where we kind of got the idea of a musical toy that you kind of that's effectively idiot-proof, that you kind of can't mess up.
Yeah.
And so. Well, we said we built this little prototype. We said, "Oh man, this might be kind of cool in VR." And so we built kind of a really basic interface, a basic kind of drum interface, and started aligning these quantized notes onto these drums. And what we found is that there was, VR is generally more immersive, and then there was also a synergy with your body movement. It felt better to move your body and kind of, it's easier to keep a beat when you're standing. It's easier to kind of simulate hitting the notes when you're swinging the controllers versus when you're on a controller. And so everything just kind of lined up synergistically for that experience to be really, really fun. And so, things kind of came together there. Problem is, we knew it wasn't a game. It was just a fun toy.
Yeah.
And so, for a while there, we were racking our brain, how do we make this into a game? And ended up going down some wrong paths. Some of them. Actually, there's one that even had some similarities to Beat Saber. So we kind of were trying out these different things. We had a Highway at one point. Because we're looking at Guitar Hero and some of the other games like that.
Yeah.
But eventually, what we landed on was, we'll take this basic interface of playing some notes and we'll start adding more and more things to it. We'll start adding, basically some other instruments you can play, grenades, the loopers, vocal tools, different tracks, kind of all these other things that make up different parts of a song. We'll keep adding those into it. And what we came to was really kind of this like format for interactive music, that if we're able to squish and bend a song kind of into this format, you can now have these interfaces to be able to control any piece of it. And when you're in there, you feel partially like a DJ and you feel partially like a guitarist or something, playing notes live. And I don't know, have you gotten a chance to?
Yeah, I've had a chance to check it out like quite a few times actually. So I'm following you 100% as far as like, and I understand what you're saying about the DJ kind of guitarist kind of mix, because a lot of times like you're kind of dividing your time between like managing different things that are looping in the songs versus actually playing specific notes. And so
exactly
for people out there that haven't tried it.
Exactly. And so it makes you feel like you're that performance artist, and it creates that kind of tension of what am I going to do next? Like, for example, I'll play some notes and I might hit a wrong note, and then I'll take that wrong note and make it part of the melody that I was creating all along. And actually now it was like a right note. It's a really interesting process. But just back to a little bit about the story of the development of it. So as we saw that there was some potential with this, we had our first internship program, that I led that summer, bringing on interns. Henry was an intern, along with Ed Tucker, who's done a number of things on the project.
And this was in 2016 again? I just want to
2016.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the core artists on the project, Lauren Lehman, she was also an intern, as well as Christina Orcutt, who did some work as well. So that intern class helped build out the team that started doing a little bit of the work on that project. And then, I saw in particular the people on the project who had experience with music production, Henry, Ed, Rosick, they had the right kind of...
Hello? You cut out for just a moment. Can you?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
That's Skype.
Okay, you're back. You're back.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. So you had just said that Henry, Rosick, some of the others had the music experience, and then.
Yeah. So basically, this is an interesting aspect of the project. Basically, I realized that people with experience creating music or experience with the music festival scene, like Umez, they had, they kind of had the right stuff, so to speak, for the project. They had the right cultural background to kind of imbue the project with, a cultural sense that made it very unique. And so, as a requirement for the project, I made sure to basically recruit people onto the team who, had that same kind of sense. And so, Zach, who's the project's producer, once again, very big into the music festival scene, lots of experience with a lot of electronic DJs. Jonathan Radcliffe very much has experience and is a fan with a number of music games. I know we kind of bonded over Electroplankton and some of other projects like that. So it's kind of, you have to have enough of that knowledge, because this is a very specific kind of genre. It's not not every game developer is going, this is not every game developer's cup of tea, so to speak. You have to have people who are into this sort of project and kind of understand the merits of it and know what it's trying to kind of represent. And so we were able to get, to build up enough of a team that was able to really do that. And then from there, it was about building out that interface, building out the visualizer system, refining all the technology, really building out the music reality engine, which I can talk about as well, and really making something that was very precise and very just immersive, and then filling it full of as much incredible music as we possibly could get in, which is its own fascinating process. This is the first time in a game that this much music has been licensed, with all of the masters and all of the actual stems from the songs, the individual elements, which most artists they don't want to give up, or some of them don't even have anymore or don't have the rights to. We're actually able to acquire those, which allow us to really pick apart the song. So it's very much revolutionary from that standpoint. Even like a rock band or something, they're not really getting the individual elements. They're usually just getting like 3 tracks or something like that.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, because just when you were talking, the 3 things that kind of like triggered things in my head. You mentioned Music Reality Project. Then you mentioned the licensed music aspect of it, which sounds really interesting. And then also just talking about kind of the live events that you guys did. So because it sounds like some of the talent that you guys were able to bring to your team that specifically understood the culture of the music, I would imagine that led to some of the events that you guys ended up participating in. But
yeah, I'll talk about a few things. So the music reality engine is pretty interesting. That's a lot of that starts with Rosek, and him being an electrical engineer. He really wanted to build out something using pure data, which is a low-level audio programming language. It's a visual scripting language. I remember when I took the only audio for games class I ever took was at USC, taught by a guy named Vincent Diamante, and Vincent is I believe he's the audio director over at that game company, and it was a really fascinating class where he delved into the art and the craft that is music and sound for games. And we for example, like pure data lets you build, like we rebuilt the sound effects that are used in Super Mario Brothers from the ground up using oscillators and basically everything that you would use.
That's
all
really
the little elements that you would use at the lowest possible level, at the electronics level. So you kind of, to give you that initial kind of understanding. But what pure data allows us to do is to recreate everything from scratch, to create full samplers, to create a synthesizer purely on the software side. And so that's really where the project started, and it started with Rosek's knowledge of that, and then we started kind of building onto that, and now we have a whole multifaceted engine that lets us do a number of different things all at once. That's very well optimized, thanks to the work of both Rosek and Cameron, another one of our engineers, and a number of other people. And the engine is also fully isolated from Unity as well, so we could take that engine and bring it over we could hook it up to Unreal and run things that way. You could use that engine for live performance kind of by itself. You could hook it up to hardware. So it's kind of it's its own technology that we have that we're very happy with now.
What are some of the advantages of using it at that lower, like being able to create the music from that lower level versus, I guess, traditional ways of reproducing music in games? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, basically we have a very large amount of control, and so we're able to not only create something like the synthesizer, but we can do a lot of complex audio processing, and because like we have to take all of these songs to different right, and we have to mix them all relative to each other. But we're not just mixing a final song or a record or a bounce, right? We're mixing all of the individual elements with each other as well. And then there's a lot of very low level timing and little tiny details with the mixed reality engine itself, in terms of making a quantized note feel good, in terms of how much it's delayed versus kind of when you've hit it. So all getting into all of those details and being able to test them outside of the game engine, because really they have nothing to do with the game engine. The game engine is an interface into them, and you show the kind of visual feedback. But at the end of the day, you can actually prototype all of those things in the music reality engine itself. And in fact, what we do is we build tracks and instruments you can play with in Ableton first, and then some of the other audio, the DAWs, digital audio workstations. We'll build that out in there, kind of play around with changes, jam on it. And usually we call people over and be like, hey, check this out, start jam away, see if it's fun. And then we bring it into the music reality engine, test it, get everything working there, optimize it properly, and then we bring the Unity side of it and actually have it working in Unity. So it's it's kind of a multi-layered approach, but that allows us also, because we mostly do Unreal development here.
Okay.
It does allow us to then reuse it potentially in Unreal.
So what is it like? Kind of transitioning from the music reality engine over to licensed music. The music that you guys were able to get, and then also getting the assets that would work properly with the music reality engine. Like how did that all work out?
Yeah, so basically, it's pretty interesting going through the music licensing process. We, I would say that we're very good at this company at presenting ourselves to people. If someone comes into the office, meets a lot of the staff, plays a lot of our products, it's kind of, it's something that other people really want to be part of. We have something really, really special here. We have something very special culturally here. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that we just have the ability to do things that some other studios can't. Being in Los Angeles helps as well. So basically, we're able to get record producers to come into the office, show them the things that we're working on, show them a small prototype, and then work our way toward getting a deal to actually license stems and music from them. And it was a difficult process. We had to kind of work our way up from the bottom and kind of build our way up to larger and larger artists. Luckily, a number of people on the team have connections to a number of artists. Roger Zhao has been the person who's managing all of our artist relationships, and it's a combination of the things that we've been able to do with the company, but also there's basically everyone in the music industry, and honestly a lot of people across the world in all sorts of industries really want to get into virtual reality. Mm-hmm. And the creative industries in particular want to. So you have a lot of musicians out there who want to get into virtual reality. Only a handful of them know kind of what they should be doing in virtual reality, or have kind of like a vision for what to do, because virtual reality is very difficult. Mm-hmm. They're not game developers, not filmmakers, they're musicians. Yeah. And a lot of them, they have filmmakers, they have people they work with on music videos, and they do a lot of things that way. But VR is still kind of a bit obtuse relative to what you would normally do if you're shooting a music video. Yeah. Because it's interactive, right? So it's like, how do you get your or your head around making something interactive relative to kind of what their brand is and what their music is? Mm-hmm. And a few people out there, I'm blanking on some of the names. Oh, well, like will.i.am is a good example. He has a whole interactive project that he's worked on that's critically acclaimed, and a handful of them, Bjork as well. Like a handful of them have really figured it out and kind of knocked it out of the park and done really cool things. But it's not an easy thing where anyone can do it. You have to find partners and game developers and engineers who really know what they're doing. Yep. Which I can attest to is an incredibly difficult thing to do. So because of that, we're basically giving them the opportunity to, do something innovative in VR, and all they really have to do is send us their stems. And a lot of the stems for these songs are kind of, they've been sitting around for a while. The song has come out, multiple years ago, and it did fairly well, or what have you. But the stems are not really being monetized in any way. So this gives them an opportunity to essentially take those stems and remonetize them. And then we basically. And what
does the stem comprise of? Because as someone that's kind of outside of music, I would imagine it's kind of the back. It's like a portion of the song, or what parts of the songs are you guys looking for?
I mean, ideally, it's every element of the song. So if you hear a kick drum, that kick drum by itself would be on one track. Got it. And so you could isolate it down to just that do, just that kick drum by itself, and then essentially every element of the track, ideally from the vocals to the hi-hat to everything, is all on different individual isolated tracks. Okay. And then so usually, let's say there's like 20 of those tracks. If they give us an Ableton project with all those tracks, or they literally give us 20 wave files, right? Yeah. Essentially, those are the individual pieces. Got it. Then what we do is cut them up and basically put them into the Music Reality Engine format, we then sometimes have to add maybe an extra playable instrument or something on top of it. And it's actually kind of funny. A few of the artists we've worked with, we have actually added a few elements to their song, and we'll then send the elements back to them and be like, hey, here you go, we made these for your song. And they're like, wow, these are really good. Like maybe like they're actually improving the song in one or two cases.
Sure.
Or kind of like adding some extra flavor to it, that because it's a slightly different experience. When you listen to a song, it's all about the actual arrangement itself and the progression of that. Whereas this is more like it's less about that, and it's more about the individual elements being enough to really have that kind of sonic playground, so to speak, where you're really able to play around with enough things and compose a song live on the fly, yourself. That's pretty good. So basically, those individual elements are really important. But it can be a difficult thing for artists to do because they, a lot of artists are. And you can read stories about this, but they're really specific about their sound, and they don't want anyone to figure out. It's like giving someone it's like asking McDonald's what their secret sauce is, and they tell you it's like, well, it's 1 cup of salt, and it's like they're not going to do that, right?
Yeah.
We need to break those elements apart so we can give control to the user so that they can have a great experience. But there's some artists out there who are not going to want to give you those elements because it might reveal how some of them were produced, or how they're able to generate a sound that other people are not able to generate. So it's you have to have artists who are very forward thinking, who want to try something new. And ultimately, those, in my experience, those are the artists who really get ahead, or the ones who really, really want to innovate. And I think music is changing. I think music is changing from a 4-minute MP3 that you download, right? I think it's evolving into something that's pretty different, and we're excited to be a company who's pushing that forward.
Yeah, kind of curious about, I guess maybe, were there any limitations in terms of like what you were able to do with some of the stems as far as like mixing different assets from different artists together? Like I don't know, I haven't checked like all of the final arrangements in the game yet. Like I remember when I played it at GDC and E3, there were different levels, and within each one of those there were is each level a different song, or are you able to combine elements from multiple artists and songs together? And was that process kind of difficult to sell to some of the artists, if that's the case, or what was some of that like?
So this is definitely not a game where we're remixing from like song 1 to song 2, which makes it pretty different than a normal kind of DJ experience. I mean, many things make it different, but in particular, this is one kind of individual song that you're able to play inside of, and then you're able to transition to another song, whichever song you choose. So it's a little bit more like a DDR or Rock Band from that standpoint. But we actually have a built-in transitioning system that allows you to have a smooth transition from one to the other, but it really is more about having the ideal experience of that song. Because if we were mixing the songs together, once again, it might get fairly difficult and fairly complex. You basically have this combinatoric explosion of possibilities of different tempos and keys and all of these kinds of things.
Okay, one of the things that before I wanted to talk about the live events and kind of the performance aspect of the game, but before we get into that, I was kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about what it was like balancing the quantization that you mentioned of actually getting the music to sound good with the interactivity, and making sure that the player felt like they were, in control of kind of what they were creating. Like obviously there's some people like, and at least the times I've played it, like sometimes I feel like certain songs I'm really getting the hang, like in general everything sounds pretty good, but sometimes I feel like I'm doing better than other times, right? I'm kind of curious as to like what you guys determined was the proper balance of that to make players feel like they were having fun, but also make the music good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Well, first off, I'll say that there's part of the secret inner workings of this thing, kind of how it works, is that there's a relationship between the BPM of a song and the expected latency of a quantized note. And so different BPMs will essentially make that quantization typically larger or smaller.
Okay.
And so there's a sweet spot BPM. I forget exactly what it is, but probably something around like 90 or 95, or maybe it's like 100. But basically, there's a sweet spot, and then there's like a sour spot, I guess you could say, of best to worst type of thing. I think like the sour spot might be like 120 or 130, and this, or maybe it's like 135, and the sweet spot's like 100 or something like that.
Okay.
But basically, the closer you get to that sweet spot, the better notes will feel. And then it also has to do with the ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. Basically, the curve of the sound.
Okay.
And the attack is the first part, and attack, sustain, decay, release. ASDR? I always forget. But basically, the attack is just how quickly the sound comes in, and usually a fast attack is something. What we found is like fast attack and then kind of like a long release or like a delayed release is usually something that works out pretty well. And in particular, because you're trying to, when you hit that orb and then there's a slight delay and the hear the note, it's already a delay, right? So any extra delay in the attack will then line up more so with the delay that's already there. So you want to get as much of that as possible. So a quick attack is really good. And basically, what we found is that there's, if you can get the if the actual latency, when I say latency, I mean the moment that you hit an orb, which by the way, I'll say real quick, is when you hit an orb in the game or, an interface in the game, it's already delayed, because you have the natural latency of the head-mounted display in that system. So what's funny is that your motion to photon has a delay of maybe 10 to 20 milliseconds, but that's within the threshold of like, let's say 30 milliseconds for your brain to say. I don't want to go too much into like the neuroscience of it, but I'll go in it. Let's do it. So
why not?
You basically have two brains, left and right, and they communicate with each other through the corpus callosum in the middle. And your brains are constantly kind of having a conversation with each other about what just happened. And when something happens that through your sensory input connects to one of your hemispheres of your brain, and that brain says, "Hey, this occurred," it tells the other one, and the other one goes, "Oh, I'll take your word for it." It looks like that's true. So there's usually not too much dissonance, but sometimes there is a little bit of dissonance between them, and so there's a bit of wiggle room in your perception, where if something is lower than like 30 milliseconds of latency, your brain kind of goes, "Hey, did that happen in real time? Yeah, sure, why not? Sounds like it did," because it's used to doing the "hey, sure, why not," because of the corpus callosum. So it's kind of like it's like a little like window in your perception,
Sure,
a little that you can sneak through. And so that's how the head-mounted displays themselves work. That's why we're able to do this in the first place, and you kind of buy it right under a certain threshold. It's not zero, right, but it's under a certain threshold. And so what we do with Electronauts is we get into that threshold, and really we do this with everything, right? You fire a gun in raw data, it goes off within the threshold, because the game needs to still process, right? The game usually will have a frame of latency processing the press of the trigger to the gun firing, right? So that is still under the threshold, and your brain still goes, "Oh, that happened in real time." This is similar to how the quantization works, where you press, you hit an orb, and instead of happening in that exact frame, it needs to wait a little bit, but just not wait too long. A frame or two, it needs to be under that 30 millisecond threshold, and then it can play. What's lucky for us, though, is that the motion to photon already has a delay, and then so we're just stacking the delay on top of that, and your brain will compare it to when the orb itself moves, and if that's under 30 milliseconds to when you hear it, then it should be fine. And luckily there's the delay of just naturally hitting something and hearing it in reality. So it kind of, when we get it engineered well enough, the delay is low enough where you go, okay, I think I made that noise, and so that must have been me, and that's where you get that euphoric feeling of, wow, I'm like a really good musician.
So I guess to piggyback that, so let's say like I'm just like, so I understand like the time delay portion that you're talking about. Let's say I'm just really, really bad at music. Like I just have no rhythm whatsoever, and I would have been hitting that orb like at the absolute wrong time every time. Like what are you guys, like how are you guys able to take that really bad rhythm player and make them sound good within like the time frame? Like I'm just kind of curious how it works.
Well, so there's a minimum time. Excuse me. There's a minimum time and a maximum time when it comes to the amount that's being quantized, and the BPM has to be high enough. This is actually why you don't see, a lot of like acoustic guitar rock songs or like really low tempo, songs in the game, because when the tempo is low enough, or certain instruments, right? Like if I have a low tempo song with like a slow attack guitar sound, and I hit an interface, and you're, a terrible musician, right?
Yeah.
That effective quantization of that could be up to like 80 milliseconds or something.
I see. Okay.
And so that's not going to feel good, right? So it's about designing, you're kind of designing the song with an understanding of the interface and how it works. So ultimately, not all music is going to go perfectly into Electronauts. And then also we have to kind of simplify the song structure as well. So every song is in 4/4 time. There's 4 bars per loop, as we say. We call 4 bars a loop. And basically, there's 3 sets of vocals that you can do, and there's I think like 16 bar vocals. There's 3 of them each, so you can have a total of 48 bars of vocals, and then that's it, because that's all we could fit in the game, right? Like we basically have a similar structure for everyone. Each one has 5 grenades. So if there weren't enough what we call one-shot sound effects in the song as we received it, we would add 2 more that we think work, aesthetically well in the game. So it's basically because you have that similar interface for every song. Like basically when you're a musician and you're like, hey, can you guys play this song? They go, oh, sure. What key? Right? They ask you what the key is, or if they don't know what the song is, they might ask about the tempo or something. So we basically take away that kind of introductory information that you're going to like need to know about a song, and all you're doing is just reusing the same interfaces over again at a different tempo with different sounds, effectively representing a different song.
Got it. Okay. No, that's really interesting. So thanks for that. I guess now moving over to, so you had mentioned kind of what you guys had to do in order to take these systems and make it into a game. I know part of that was adding more and more different interfaces, more and more different types of like instruments, quote unquote, within the game. Another thing that I just noticed when I've been able to play it is just how much of an emphasis there seems to be on kind of the presentation aspect. And I know you're able to do multiplayer within the game, and maybe talk a little bit about some of those systems and how you guys like push the game development side of it, like the actual game system side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so on the multiplayer side, this is definitely I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but it is a revolutionary project. It is the first time that I know of that you can really, and it's kind of like a full-bodied game, because you can technically do it in Plink, but the first time where you really can take well-known songs and jam to them with another person anywhere in the world, right? So someone is, in Siberia, you can get together and jam together, and normally that hasn't been possible because of latency, right? Because you normally have to time yourself well with them. That's why it's hard to jam with anybody on the internet because of the natural amount of latency. Video games trick us into thinking that 2 subjective realities are the same reality by their kind of like latency tricks that they do. And sometimes like when you feel like you got shot in Call of Duty and you didn't go around the corner, but the other person did see you go around the corner, right? There's little inconsistencies. That's kind of that subjective reality thing coming into play. What's great about this project is that the quantization trick that we do allows us to get around that subjective reality as well. So what the other player is hearing 100 milliseconds late is a slightly different melody than what you're playing and you're hearing in real time, but it's probably good enough that they're going to be able to jam with you a little bit, and neither of you are really going to notice that much. And so inevitably you can then jam together, and playing it multiplayer is just an absolute blast. I mean, sometimes you'll play like call and response, or you'll get one person will be kind of the mixer and one person will be kind of like the jammer, so to speak. And it's a really, really, really fun time. We used a lot of the standard multiplayer technologies that are out there. We used Photon Bolt, which is really a really solid middleware that's available in Unity. We basically, from a multiplayer technology standpoint, it's not super innovative from that. It's more getting this musical system into that and allowing people to use that together is really where
Oh, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, it cut out for just a second. Okay, yeah, no, and as far as I guess like leading off of that, like how do you guys see like I mean part of the fun of like it's amazing playing the game, of course, but it's also fun just being able to hear what people are making within the game and see them kind of performing as a DJ or like you really see like the amount of energy and excitement that goes into actually playing the game when you watch one of your friends, like for example, just like jamming out with somebody else, like on stage or wherever the case may be. Like, do you see a lot of people kind of playing this at parties, kind of in the background, or like what are some of your experiences with how the game is showed when Survios is playing around with it at some of their events?
I mean, this is this is definitely the game that I would have liked to have had in college. And we had Rock Band and we had Guitar Hero, and they were really fun. They were kind of like the dorm room games that you would play usually before a party or maybe like as a party was winding down or something. But this is a game that you could play legitimately to DJ a party with.
Okay.
And as we come out with more music and it gets kind of more variable and people really learn how to harness the game fully, I see this as something that people can DJ a party to. And basically it allows someone who never thought they would have the ability to really DJ. It actually allows them to really do that. So it's something that, for me personally, as someone who's never played an instrument and is kind of terrified by traditional DJ interfaces, this is the thing that I've just personally always wanted.
As far as you briefly mentioned there something about like adding more music to the game. I don't know if you guys have kind of ironed out all those details yet, or if you know exactly how you're going to go about adding songs to the game. But like, what are some of your plans on there if you guys have ironed those out yet?
Well, so we have a lot more music that we've licensed that is not in the game, because it takes us a while to not only license the music, get it all together, test it, but then get it mixed into the game properly. Like it's a whole process there. So we have a lot more music that we'll be adding, and then there is we have been thinking about mod support. Basically the ability for fans to essentially add their own music to the game if they have stems or sounds, or they're getting stems from Splice or a number of the other kind of sound libraries and music libraries that are out there. We're interested in the possibility of making it open. It would probably be for PC only if we did it, because PlayStation VR, I don't know the technical process of making a moddable game. I don't think modding is just much harder on a console, but mod support is something that if there's enough interest in it, we're going to see if we can price out how much it would take from an engineering standpoint, how much it would cost. But that's a way to be able to take any sets of music or to make remixes, or you could do like, for example, you could even take MP3s that you have and convert them to WAV files and put a bunch of different songs on individual tracks in the game, and then just use it as a track switcher or something. And there's all sorts of things you could use it for. So we're looking into what the kind of like long-term life of the game could be from a modability standpoint. But it's a whole technical problem that we have to solve to be able to do that.
Okay, because I was gonna say, like, some of what you talked about before with the music reality engine and all that, like, I don't know if you would have to be able to tweak some of those, like adding in songs, or like as far as how the engine worked with different samples, or would it just feed in and work?
It has some flexibility, but it's some of the flexibility has to be built into it. So, for example, you can basically you can set any tempo in it right now, for example. But everything has to be 4/4 structure, right? The 4/4 structure is not like, that's really not going anywhere. That's I would say that is a limitation, right? But it works really well with I guess what Rosick would say is beat-based music. So it works well with EDM. It works well with hip hop. It's not going to work well with like jazz. It'll like certain rock songs will work. Like I could put like I'd love to put like Eminence Front by The Who in it because that song is a consistent. It's not a typical Who song. It's very much a song that is more of an Electronauts song, right? It would work really really well in this, but then your other Who songs that classic songs they wouldn't work as well. So you have to kind of pick and choose your battles, so to speak.
Okay, and yeah, you said at the beginning of the interview that you guys are hoping to release that within the next 24 hours. I know you said like 16 hours or something like that. What are some of the last minute kinds of things that you guys have to worry about counting down to that final hour?
Well, we have a day one patch that we have to make sure gets accepted by Sony and gets into, Valve and Oculus. So it's really just working with the platform partners to line up everything. Okay. Obviously, there's things like in the press, things like this podcast that you're listening to is, things that I'm doing, we have materials for all the artists that we're working with them on, and so there's two sides of it are just making sure that the game build is the best possible build that we can get out for customers, and then the other aspect of it is just to make sure we market everything as well as we can and amplify our signal as much as possible. Okay, and is this the first game that you guys have released across all of the platforms at once, or because I'm trying to remember if Raw Data or Sprint Vector if those launched like on PlayStation VR, like I don't think they did, right? Like not concurrently. This is many firsts for us. This is the first game that we're releasing in Unity. It's the first game we're releasing on all the major platforms all at the same time, like you mentioned. First game that we're releasing on Mac. So this is compatible with Mac on HTC Vive. So, this is very much, a very kind of experimental thing. So we have a bunch of people, just like myself, on pins and needles going, oh my God, is it going to break? Are there going to be lots of bugs? Like what's going to happen? It's kind of a big unknown. But so far, through all the people that we've sent early keys to, everything has gone very well. That's awesome. No, congratulations. And yeah, like we kind of alluded to at the beginning, I mean, you guys really have been kind of, with every project, it seems like you guys are getting more and more ambitious in terms of, and now with music licensing, you licensed like a movie property with Creed, and like each of these different games are tackling major, kind of problems within VR that need to be solved by someone. And it looks like you guys aren't shy to kind of, take on some of those hard problems like locomotion and sprint vector and all kinds of things. So keep up the awesome work. And just in terms of like where you guys kind of, as an enthusiast that's really into VR and wants to get more and more people excited about it, what are some things that are on your mind as far as what makes you excited about continuing to work in the VR industry? Well, I think that the two most important things are making the most important thing really is removing barriers to entry for anyone. And at home, that means getting those devices to get cheaper and making them easier to use. So I'm very excited about what Oculus and Valve and some of the other companies are doing with simplifying the interface for the VR headset. Mm-hmm. The idea of, you have a laptop and you take one cable and you plug the headset into that, mm-hmm. and now it works, or you or the Oculus Santa Cruz, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea of a standalone VR system that, I hate to say it this way, but doesn't suck, right? That actually has 6 degree of freedom controllers and has a decent amount of video rendering capability, right? And decent battery life, which is very hard. I mean, I say it doesn't suck, in a tongue-in-cheek way, but these are incredibly difficult, complex technical challenges to solve. So that's why a lot of the things, might be like that. But from a home user standpoint, getting those things ready is very, very exciting, and making wider field of view, making the experience generally better. And then from the non-home side of it, making it easier for people to go into virtual reality arcades and play our titles is very, very important to us as well, and we're pushing on that front. Yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to actually check out the location, but like the arcade that you guys opened up. But I've definitely heard great things about that. And I mean, but you talked about expanding. What kind of plans does Survios have in terms of are you just looking to open more within California, or are you looking to expand further? Here, give me 1 second. I'm going to let my dog in. Sure. And then there's a good time to. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so we're looking to, let me start this over. We're definitely looking to expand. Our first location that we have at the Del Amo Fashion Center in Torrance has gone really well. If anybody doesn't know about the Del Amo Fashion Center, it's actually the mall that was in Jackie Brown, the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Very cool.
Where, like, half the movie takes place in it. So
Yeah.
that was before it got renovated, but it's still basically the same mall. So so the arcade that we have down there has gone very well. I like to say that that's probably the smallest arcade we'll ever open. It's like 2,500 square feet, but we're definitely going to be opening larger arcades. And really we're looking, just like with everything, as you've kind of mentioned, we want to be incredibly ambitious. We're not just looking to commoditize this sort of thing and keep where it currently is. We want to be able to innovate and create wholly new experiences. So we're looking to see how we can develop our arcade into something that is incredibly unique and can stand on its own relative to not only other arcades, but really any other place that you'd want to go, any other destination. We want to create something that can be a fixture of the community that it's brought to.
Okay, and long term, do you see, I guess, where do you see like home consumer VR versus location based VR kind of diverging as far as like what experiences you're able to do at a location-based arcade? Like, are you?
Well, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think free roam VR, seems to be like really free roam VR and room scale VR seem to have more of a fit for locations.
Okay.
And kind of stand up VR, quote unquote, seems to have more of a fit for the at home use.
Okay.
Because it's one of them requires, there's like a synergy between the experience design and the spatial configuration.
Uh-huh.
In the scale side of things, whereas when you're at home, you look at VR as a little bit more of a immersive motion interface, but it's not. You don't want to design something where it's like, okay, your room is 10 by 12. Go to the left corner of your room and look down and pick up. It's not like that.
Yeah,
it's much more about something like Electronauts or something like a Beat Saber or something like Sprint Vector that has a locomotion system. I think that's really where a lot of the home offerings are going.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I mean, you definitely, as games, I think, are getting more and more complex. You see games taking advantage of like simpler motions, but then really getting you to explore the in-game environment more and more through like better interactions and stuff like that. So that totally makes sense. So, but okay, well,
yeah,
I don't want to.
I think.
No. Go ahead.
I'll say one more thing is that VR as like, do you remember when Red Steel came out?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So that is what VR lets us do, is the things we thought we could do with a Wii, or some people thought could be done with Wii, is really what the at-home VR systems are really allowing us to kind of do today, which is going like moving past where motion gaming was, moving past where first-person shooters were, and really into something that's very new and compelling at home. And then, like I said, walking around and having really a spatial experience is, I think, where the arcade side of things is moving to. And I think arcades they're both a spatial experience, and they're also, I do believe the stand-up VR has a place in the arcades as well.
Okay, but that makes sense though. Like what you were saying. I mean, I think that also speaks to why. It's going to be huge when Santa Cruz and some of these other standalones are able to bring 6 Degrees of Freedom, like an actual real tracked motion controllers, to those more easy to use systems, because that's the magic, I think, of especially home VR, is being able to have one-to-one movement with motion controllers in a virtual space.
Exactly. I mean, I think the ultimate thing is going to be when we have, a headset that's both VR and AR. That's, like the ultimate thing is it basically looks like glasses, but it does both VR and AR, wide field of view. It has maybe 2 small things that track in your hands, but also tracks your fingers, and is kind of, you can plug it in for infinite battery power, or you can beam the battery to it. So so it lasts all day, even though it's wireless. Like eventually, there's a whole all of the largest companies in the world, right? Whether it's Apple or Amazon or whoever, I think all of them have a vested interest in getting to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that these ideas exist kind of tells you, usually the reality of what people are able to come up with is usually, far exceeds, I guess, what your wild expectations are when you're just thinking up the ideas. So hopefully we'll be in a future where we're able to kind of see all of these things come to fruition.
Yep.
So, all right, well, yeah, I'm super excited, and like I said, I'm actually, when I get off of this, I'm gonna go and play some more Electronauts. So can't wait to do that, and super excited for you guys. And as far as like I said, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you're super busy with getting all these last minute touches out there. For people interested in kind of keeping up with you guys, what's the best way to kind of track Electronauts and the other stuff that Survios is up to?
Yeah, so check out Electronauts. Go to electronautsvr.com. And then, or also, you can just go to survios.com and then survios.com/electronauts. We're also on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're everywhere. We're on Instagram. So, definitely check us out. You can look at my personal Twitter is Nathan Burba, last name Burba. And I think I'm on Instagram, although I rarely use it.
All right, fair enough. So, all right, well, thank you again for your time, and for everybody out there, check out Electronauts. It's a really amazing experience. So.